Queen Zara stood on the balcony of her fortress tower, watching 3 moons rise over the planet Velcros. Her empire stretched across 12 star systems, and every alien species within those borders knew her name. They whispered it in fear, spoke it with respect, and never dared to challenge it. The Velcan Empire was the strongest force in this part of the galaxy, and Zara intended to keep it that way. Her skin was deep purple, almost black in the moonlight, and her tall frame reached nearly 7 feet in height. Her arms moved with practiced grace as she reviewed reports on her datapad. Golden eyes scanned the information with the sharp focus of a predator. Tomorrow would bring the Galactic Peace Summit, where leaders from 6 major alien civilizations would gather to discuss trade agreements and territorial disputes. These meetings were mostly for show. Everyone knew that Zara's military power made her the real decision-maker in any negotiation. General Thok entered the chamber behind her, his heavy footsteps echoing on the metal floor. The massive warrior stood 8 feet tall, with thick gray skin and bone ridges running along his skull. His species, the Granics, had served as Zara's personal guard for 3 generations. They were loyal, strong, and utterly fearless in battle. "My queen," Thok said, bowing his head slightly. "The final security reports for tomorrow's summit." Zara took the datapad without turning around. Her eyes moved quickly through the information. Guard positions, ship movements, background checks on all visiting delegates. Everything appeared normal. The other species might not like her dominance, but none were foolish enough to challenge her directly. "Any concerns, General?" she asked. Thok hesitated. This caught Zara's attention immediately. In 15 years of service, her general had never shown uncertainty about anything related to security or military matters. "Speak freely," Zara commanded. "Some of the younger soldiers have been sharing stories again about the human warriors. I know you consider these tales to be nonsense, but the stories are spreading. Even veterans who should know better are beginning to believe them." Zara finally turned around, her golden eyes fixed on Thok's face. The human stories had been circulating through military ranks for months now. According to these ridiculous tales, there existed a species called humans who possessed impossible combat abilities. They supposedly never surrendered in battle, could survive wounds that would kill any normal creature, and fought with a determination that bordered on insanity. "And what exactly do these stories claim this time?" Zara asked, her tone making it clear she found the entire subject tiresome. Thok shifted uncomfortably. "The latest version says humans can fight for days without rest, that they become more dangerous when injured, not weaker, that they would rather die than accept defeat even when victory is impossible. Some soldiers claim that human warriors once held off an entire fleet with just a handful of fighters." "Ridiculous propaganda," Zara said with a wave of her hand. "These stories always appear when my enemies need an excuse for their failures. Instead of admitting they were outmatched by superior Velcan forces, they invent mythical super warriors to blame for their defeats." "Yes, my queen. But the stories are becoming more detailed, more specific. They describe human appearance, their technology, even their homeworld location. Some intelligence reports suggest the stories might be based on real encounters." Zara's eyes narrowed. Intelligence reports meant that other species were taking these stories seriously. That concerned her more than the stories themselves. If her enemies believed in mythical human warriors, they might make strategic decisions based on false information. Or worse, they might be using human stories as a cover for some other plan. "Double the security for tomorrow's summit," she ordered, "and run background checks on any reports mentioning humans from the past 6 months. I want to know where these stories are really coming from." Thok saluted and left the chamber. Zara returned her attention to the 3 moons outside her window. In 20 years of conquest and expansion, she had encountered dozens of alien species. Some were strong, others were clever, a few were both. But none had ever possessed the impossible abilities described in the human legends. Biology simply did not work that way. No creature could ignore pain, survive massive injuries, and fight beyond the point of exhaustion. The stories were clearly fiction, designed to frighten weak-minded soldiers. The next morning brought gray clouds and steady rain to Velcros. Zara, dressed in her formal armor, a masterwork of Velcan engineering that combined protection with ceremonial beauty, The dark metal plates were etched with gold designs, showing her victories in 12 major battles. A ceremonial sword hung at her side, though she preferred more modern weapons for actual combat. The Great Hall had been prepared for the summit. Representatives from 6 species would attend, along with their guards and advisors. The Reptilian Consortium sent Ambassador Vex, a cunning negotiator known for finding profit in any situation. The Silicon Collective was represented by Core Unit 7, an artificial intelligence housed in a crystalline body. The insectoid hive queen Chirp arrived with a swarm of her smaller offspring, serving as translators and note-takers. Zara took her place at the head of the massive oval table. The other species arranged themselves according to their relative power and influence. She noticed several delegates whispering among themselves before the session began. This was normal political behavior, but something about their expressions seemed different today. "Welcome to Velcros," Zara announced, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. "We have much to discuss regarding trade routes, mining rights, and territorial boundaries. I trust we can reach agreements that benefit everyone present." The first 2 hours proceeded normally. Trade negotiations moved smoothly, with Zara's empire receiving the most favorable terms as expected. The other species might grumble privately, but they knew better than to push too hard against her demands. Military strength translated directly to economic advantage in galactic politics. During a break in the proceedings, Ambassador Vex approached Zara's position. The reptilian creature moved with the smooth grace of a natural predator, his green scales shifting color slightly in the chamber's lighting. "Queen Zara," Vex said with a formal bow. "Might I speak with you privately for a moment?" "Of course," Zara replied. They moved to a smaller chamber adjoining the Great Hall. "I felt it necessary to share some concerning intelligence with you," Vex began. "My species has encountered disturbing reports from the Outer Rim territories. Stories of human military forces operating in sectors that were supposed to be uninhabited." Zara felt a flash of annoyance. Even during important diplomatic meetings, these ridiculous human stories continued to surface. "Ambassador, surely you do not believe in children's tales about mythical warriors." 6 months ago, I would have agreed with you completely," Vex replied. "But 3 of my trade ships have gone missing in the same region where these human sightings were reported. The ships simply vanished. No distress signals, no debris, no evidence of pirate activity. This is highly unusual behavior for space pirates or normal military forces. Missing ships prove nothing except that space travel involves risks," Zara said. "Pirates, mechanical failures, navigation errors. Any number of ordinary explanations could account for your losses. Perhaps, but the timing seems significant. And other species are reporting similar disappearances in regions where human stories are most common." Before Zara could respond, a tremendous crash echoed through the fortress. Emergency alarms began blaring, and the lights flickered briefly. Both leaders rushed back into the Great Hall, where the other delegates were already gathering near the windows. General Thok burst through the main doors, his armor scorched and his expression grim. "My queen, an unknown vessel, has crashed in the outer courtyard. The ship appears to be of unfamiliar design, and we have detected 1 survivor." "Pirates?" Zara asked. "Likely. The ship was too small for a raiding party, and it showed no aggressive actions before crashing. Our sensors indicate engine failure, possibly from battle damage sustained elsewhere." Zara considered the situation quickly. A mysterious ship crashing during the peace summit could be a coincidence, or it could be part of some plot by her enemies. Either way, the survivor might provide valuable intelligence. "Bring the survivor here for questioning," she ordered. "Increase security around the summit delegates, and scan the area for additional threats." "Already done, my queen." The survivor should arrive within minutes. The delegates murmured among themselves while they waited. Zara noticed that several seemed unusually nervous about the situation. Ambassador Vex kept glancing toward the doors as if expecting something dangerous to enter. Core Unit 7's crystalline body pulsed with rapid light patterns, indicating high-speed data processing. Even Queen Chirp's offspring had stopped their constant chittering and now remained perfectly still. When the doors opened again, Velcan guards entered the chamber. Between them walked a creature unlike any species Zara had ever encountered. It stood on two legs like many intelligent species, but its proportions were completely different. The creature was shorter than most galactic species, probably around 6 feet in height. Its skin was pale pink, almost white, with patches of brown fur covering the top of its head. Most unusual of all, it appeared to have only 2 arms, instead of the 4 or 6 that most advanced. Species possessed, the creature's clothing was damaged but seemed to be some kind of military uniform, dark blue fabric with various insignia and equipment pouches. Despite obvious injuries, including a bleeding cut on its forehead and torn fabric revealing bruises on its arms, the creature walked steadily and held its head high. "I am Ben Torres of the Human Colonial Defense Force," the creature announced in clear Galactic standard language. "My ship suffered mechanical failure while conducting a routine patrol mission. I request assistance in contacting my command structure and arranging transportation back to human territory." Complete silence filled the Great Hall. Zara stared at the creature, her mind racing. This was supposed to be impossible. Humans were legendary creatures, stories told by defeated enemies to explain their failures. They were not real species that could crash land on her fortress world during diplomatic meetings, Ambassador. Vex was the first to break the silence. "You claim to be human?" he asked, his voice carrying a mixture of fascination and fear. "I am human," Ben replied simply, "though I am surprised to encounter so many different species in one location." "Are you conducting some kind of diplomatic gathering?" Queen Chirp's offspring began rapid chittering, translating for their mother. Zara caught fragments of the translation. "Impossible, the legends, here among us." The insectoid queen herself remained motionless, but her compound eyes were fixed on Ben with an intensity that suggested recognition. "This is fascinating," Core Unit 7 announced, its synthetic voice echoing slightly in the chamber. "I have accessed 847 separate references to human military capabilities in my database. The physical description matches reported encounters with 94.3% accuracy." Zara felt something she had not experienced in years. Genuine uncertainty. If this creature was truly human, then the stories circulating through military channels might be more than propaganda. But the creature standing before her looked relatively weak and fragile. Certainly not the indestructible warrior described in the legends. "You appear to be injured," Zara observed. "Do you require medical attention?" Ben looked down at his wounds with apparent surprise, as if he had forgotten about them entirely. "These are minor. Nothing that requires immediate treatment. I appreciate your concern, but my primary need is communication with my command structure." "Minor injuries?" Zara could see that the cut on Ben's forehead was deep enough to require stitches, and the bruising on his arms suggested serious muscle damage. Any normal creature would be in significant pain and seeking medical help immediately. "Where exactly is human territory located?" Ambassador Vex asked. "Our star charts show no inhabited systems in the region where your ship was detected. Human space covers approximately 15 star systems in what you probably call the Outer Rim," Ben replied. "We maintain a policy of minimal contact with other species to avoid territorial disputes. My patrol mission was investigating reports of increased ship traffic near our border regions. 15 star systems? That would make human territory comparable in size to several of the major galactic powers represented at this summit. Yet none of Zara's intelligence networks had ever detected evidence of such a large civilization in the Outer Rim." General Thok stepped forward. "What type of weapons and defenses does your ship carry?" he asked. Ben smiled, and Zara noticed something strange about his expression. Despite his injuries and the fact that he was surrounded by alien creatures in an unknown location, he showed no signs of fear or distress. If anything, he appeared completely confident and relaxed. "Standard defensive systems only," Ben said. "Human Colonial Defense Force ships are designed for patrol duties, not military engagement. Though I suppose our definition of standard might be different from yours. And what military rank do you hold?" Queen Chirp's translator Insects asked. "Lieutenant Junior, grade. Basically the lowest officer rank in our system. I have about 2 years of active service experience." Zara exchanged glances with the other delegates. According to the human legends, Even their lowest-ranked warriors possessed incredible combat abilities. If those stories had any truth to them, they were looking at a creature capable of fighting off entire squads of normal soldiers. But Ben looked so ordinary. Yes, he was ignoring injuries that should be causing significant pain, and yes, he showed remarkable confidence despite being outnumbered and far from home. But he did not appear to be the unstoppable fighting machine described in the stories. "I have a proposition," Zara announced, making a decision that would change everything. "You claim to be human, and we have all heard various stories about human military capabilities. Rather than speculate about the truth of these legends, why not settle the matter directly?" Ben raised one eyebrow, an expression that somehow conveyed both curiosity and wariness. "What kind of settlement did you have in mind?" "Combat trial. You against one of my champions in formal arena combat. If humans are truly the warriors of legend, this should be a simple matter for you. If the stories are false propaganda, we will learn that as well." The other delegates immediately began talking among themselves. Some seemed excited by the prospect of witnessing legendary human combat skills in person. Others appeared concerned about what they might discover. Ben was quiet for several seconds, apparently considering the proposal. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of resignation that Zara found puzzling. "I accept your challenge," he said. "Though I should mention that combat trials are not typically how my people prefer to resolve diplomatic situations." "This is not diplomacy," Zara replied. "This is verification. If you are truly human, you have nothing to fear from any opponent I could provide. If you are not, then we will discover what you really are and why you are spreading false stories about your species." "Fair enough. When and where do you want to hold this trial?" Zara smiled. Finally, she would have definitive proof that human warriors were nothing more than propaganda designed to frighten the weak-minded. This ordinary-looking creature might possess some unusual pain tolerance, but he was clearly no match for a trained Velcan champion. Tomorrow at noon, in the great arena, all summit delegates will serve as witnesses. You will face my personal champion, Kron of the Deep Mountains. He has won 43 consecutive arena battles without suffering a single defeat. Ben nodded slowly. "I understand. Will this be combat to the death, or until surrender?" "Until surrender or incapacitation," Zara replied. She wanted to prove her point, not create a diplomatic incident by killing. What might be an actual alien representative, Ed? "Would prefer not to kill your champion if it can be avoided." Comment sent a ripple of surprised murmurs through the assembled delegates. This small, injured creature was expressing concern about killing Kron, the massive Velcan warrior who had never lost a fight in his entire career. Either Ben was incredibly naive about what he was facing, or the human legends were about to prove themselves. True, in the most dramatic way possible, Zara was absolutely certain. She knew which outcome was more likely. The morning of the combat trial arrived, with clear skies and bright sunlight streaming through the massive windows of the fortress. Queen Zara stood in her private chamber, adjusting the ceremonial armor she wore for important state occasions. Today would either confirm her beliefs about human mythology or force her to reconsider everything she thought she knew about galactic politics. General Thok entered the room carrying a detailed report about the arena preparations. The Great Arena was the largest combat facility on Velcros, capable of seating 15,000 spectators. For today's trial, only the summit delegates and their guards would attend. But the arena's recording systems would capture everything for later analysis. "The human has spent the night in the guest quarters," Thok reported. He requested access to a medical kit, but only used it to clean his wounds. No request for pain medication or advanced healing treatments. And Kron, preparing as always. He seems excited about facing an unknown opponent. I briefed him on human appearance and size, but he remains confident about the outcome. Zara nodded. Kron had earned his position as arena champion through years of victories against opponents from many different species. He stood 8 feet tall, weighed nearly 400 pounds, possessed natural armor plating that could deflect most handheld weapons. His reflexes were lightning fast despite his size, and his combat experience was unmatched. If humans were truly the legendary warriors described in the stories, Ben would need to demonstrate abilities that defied biological logic. Zara was certain this would not happen. An hour before the trial, the delegates gathered in the arena's royal viewing section. Ambassador Vex arrived early, his reptilian features showing obvious nervous excitement. Core Unit 7 positioned itself for optimal visual recording, its crystalline body humming with data processing activity. Queen Chirp brought her entire swarm of translator offspring, filling several rows with their constant chittering. I have reviewed all available records about human combat capabilities, Core Unit 7 announced to the group. The stories contain numerous impossible claims. Humans supposedly continue fighting with wounds that would incapacitate other species. They allegedly become more aggressive when injured, rather than seeking to minimize damage. Most significantly, they are said to refuse surrender even when facing certain death. Propaganda designed to frighten enemies, Zara replied firmly. We will see the truth today, Ambassador Vex shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My intelligence networks have been investigating human territory since yesterday. We cannot locate any inhabited systems in the regions Ben mentioned. Either human civilization is extremely well hidden, or his claims about representing a 15-system government are false. The arena floor stretched 200 feet in diameter, surrounded by 30-foot walls to protect spectators from stray weapons or debris. The surface was covered with fine sand that would absorb blood and provide stable footing for combatants. Weapon racks lined the walls, offering various types of melee and ranged weapons for trial participants to choose from. At exactly noon, the massive arena doors opened on opposite sides of the floor. Crone entered from the east gate and thunderous cheers erupted from the viewing section. The Velcan champion wore minimal armor, preferring to rely on his natural defenses and superior mobility. His gray skin gleamed in the sunlight, and the bone ridges along his skull and arms caught the light like polished stone. Crone raised his arms to acknowledge the crowd, flexing muscles that could crush steel. He had fought creatures larger than himself, faster than himself, and more intelligent than himself. In every case, superior training and experience had led to victory. Today would be no different from the West Gate. Ben walked onto the arena floor wearing the same damaged military uniform from the previous day. He had cleaned his wounds and obtained some basic protective gear, but appeared severely under-equipped compared to his opponent. The viewing section fell silent as the delegates observed the dramatic size difference between the two fighters. Zara activated the arena's communication system. This trial will determine whether human military capabilities match the legends circulating through our galaxy. Combat continues until one fighter surrenders or becomes unable to continue. Both participants may choose weapons from the available selection. Crone moved immediately to the weapon racks, selecting a massive two-handed sword designed for his species' proportions and strength. The blade was nearly 6 feet long and weighed over 50 pounds. In Crone's hands, it moved like a lightweight training weapon. Ben approached the weapons more slowly, examining various options carefully. He passed by energy weapons, explosive devices, and advanced melee weapons. Finally, he selected a simple metal rod about 3 feet long and a small combat knife. The delegates murmured among themselves at this puzzling choice. The rod appeared to be a basic training weapon with no special capabilities. Are you certain about your weapon selection? Zara asked through the communication system. These will be sufficient, Ben replied, his voice carrying clearly across the arena floor. Crone laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed off the arena walls. Little creature, you should choose real weapons. I do not wish to win through your poor preparation. Ben smiled and shifted into a relaxed combat stance. I appreciate your concern, but I prefer simple tools. They are more reliable in extended combat. Extended combat? Zara exchanged glances with the other delegates. Either Ben was completely delusional about his chances, or he knew something about his capabilities that was not immediately obvious. Begin, Zara announced. Kronn moved with surprising speed for such a large creature, closing the distance between fighters in 3 powerful strides. His massive sword swept down in an arc designed to end the fight immediately. Ben dove to one side, rolling across the sand and coming up in a crouch 15 feet away. The first exchange told Zara everything she expected to learn. Ben was quick enough to avoid the initial attack, but he could not match Crone's reach or power. The human would need to rely on speed and evasion, but the arena's confined space made that strategy unsustainable. Crone pressed his advantage, launching a series of powerful attacks that forced Ben to retreat steadily toward the arena walls. Each sword strike came closer to connecting, and Ben's movements appeared to be slowing under the pressure. "This is proceeding exactly as expected," Zara said to the other delegates. "The human shows decent reflexes, but he cannot match a trained warrior's capabilities." The first solid hit came 3 minutes into the fight. Crone's sword caught Ben's left shoulder, slicing through the fabric of his uniform and drawing blood. The impact sent the human stumbling backward, and he nearly lost his grip on the metal rod. The delegates expected Ben to call for medical attention or surrender immediately. Instead, something strange happened. Ben touched the bleeding wound with his right hand, looked at the blood on his fingers, and then smiled. "Interesting," he said, as if the injury had provided useful information rather than cause for concern. Crone paused, confused by this unexpected reaction. In his experience, wounded opponents became more cautious and defensive. They sought to minimize further damage while looking for opportunities to escape or surrender. Ben appeared to be treating the wound as a minor inconvenience. The fight resumed with Crone continuing his aggressive assault. Over the next 10 minutes, he landed several more hits. Ben's uniform became increasingly torn and bloody, and it seemed certain that the human would collapse from accumulated damage within moments. But Ben never slowed down. If anything, his movements became more precise as the fight continued. He began predicting Crone's attack patterns and positioning himself more effectively. The metal rod, which had seemed like an inadequate weapon choice, proved surprisingly effective at deflecting sword strikes when used with proper timing. "He should have surrendered by now," General Thok observed. "Those wounds would incapacitate most species." Ambassador Vex leaned forward in his seat, watching Ben's movement patterns with growing amazement. "Look at his eyes," he said quietly. "He is not showing any signs of pain or fatigue. It is as if the injuries are not affecting him at all." This was true. Despite obvious bleeding from multiple wounds, Ben continued fighting with the same energy and focus he had shown at the beginning of the trial. His tactical approach was evolving rapidly as he learned Crone's fighting style and identified weaknesses in the champion's technique. 20 minutes into the fight, something shifted. Crone's movements became slightly less precise, and his breathing grew heavier. The massive warrior had been fighting at maximum intensity, while Ben conserved energy through defensive tactics. Now, the human began pressing his own attacks for the first time. Ben's metal rod struck Crone's wrist with surgical precision, forcing the champion to adjust his grip on the heavy sword. A second strike targeted the knee joint, making Crone stumble slightly. These were not powerful attacks that caused serious damage, but they disrupted the champion's rhythm and forced him to divide his attention between offense and defense. "Impossible," Queen chirps. Translators chittered. "The human is gaining advantage. How can an injured fighter become stronger during combat?" Core Unit 7's crystalline body pulsed rapidly with data analysis. "I am detecting combat behavior patterns that match several human legends. The subject appears to be using accumulated battle damage as tactical information rather than allowing it to impair his performance." Zara gripped the arms of her chair, watching in growing disbelief as the fight continued to evolve in Ben's favor. The human's wounds were still bleeding, his uniform was torn in dozens of places, and he had taken punishment that should have ended the fight long ago. Yet he was now forcing Crone to retreat and react defensively. 30 minutes passed. Crone was visibly exhausted, his massive frame heaving with effort. Sweat poured down his gray skin, and his sword movements lacked the precision and power they had shown earlier. Ben appeared to be in exactly the same condition as when the fight began, despite his obvious injuries. "This defies biological logic," Ambassador Vex whispered. "No creature can ignore pain and fatigue like this. No species can maintain peak performance while sustaining continuous damage. The turning point came suddenly. Kron attempted a desperate overhead strike designed to end the fight through sheer power. Ben stepped inside the attack radius, the metal rod striking Kron's elbow with perfect timing. The champion's grip failed, and his sword flew across the arena to land in the sand 20 feet away. For the first time since the fight began, Kron showed genuine fear. He was disarmed, exhausted, and facing an opponent who appeared to be completely unaffected by 30 minutes of brutal combat. Ben could have pressed his advantage immediately. Instead, he stepped back and gestured toward the fallen sword. "You can retrieve your weapon if you wish," Ben offered politely. "I have no desire to win through accidental disarmament." The delegates stared in shock. This was not the behavior of a creature driven by combat fury or bloodlust. Ben was showing the kind of honor and restraint that appeared in the most idealized versions of the human legends. Kron looked at his sword, then at Ben, then back at his sword. Slowly, he shook his massive head. "I yield," the champion announced, his voice carrying across the silent arena. "I have never faced an opponent like you. You fight as if pain and exhaustion do not exist. You become more dangerous as the battle continues, not weaker. I cannot defeat you." Ben immediately dropped his weapons and approached Kron with obvious concern. "Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" The human was offering aid to the opponent who had spent the last 30 minutes trying to seriously wound him. Kron accepted Ben's assistance in retrieving his sword and walking to the arena's medical station. The viewing section erupted in confused discussions. Every delegate was talking at once, trying to process what they had witnessed. Queen Zara sat in complete silence, staring at the arena floor where Ben was helping Kron clean minor wounds. "My queen," General Thok said quietly. "What are your orders?" Zara did not answer immediately. Everything she thought she knew about galactic politics had just changed. If humans were real, if they possessed the capabilities demonstrated by Ben, then the strategic balance of power was completely different than anyone had believed. A single low-ranking human officer had defeated the greatest warrior in the Velcan Empire. He had done it while injured, outnumbered, and far from any support. Most disturbing of all, he had treated the entire trial as a diplomatic courtesy rather than a serious threat to his safety. Ambassador Vex approached Zara's position. "Your Majesty, I believe we need to reconsider our intelligence estimates about human territory and capabilities. If their junior officers possess these abilities, their senior military personnel must be extraordinary." 15 star systems, Core Unit 7 added. If human military doctrine emphasizes individual combat effectiveness over numerical superiority, a relatively small population could control significant territory through strategic positioning. Queen Chirp's translators delivered their mother's message. The insectoid hive wishes to establish immediate diplomatic contact with human leadership. We have no desire for territorial conflicts with a species that produces warriors of this caliber. Zara finally stood and activated the arena communication system. "Ben Torres of the Human Colonial Defense Force, please join us in the viewing section. We have diplomatic matters to discuss." Ben looked up from where he was helping arena medical staff treat Kron's minor injuries. "Of course, Your Majesty. I should mention that my government will want a full report on these proceedings. They take a very serious interest in diplomatic relations with neighboring civilizations." As Ben climbed the stairs to the viewing section, still bleeding from his own wounds, but moving with perfect confidence, Zara realized that the balance of galactic power had shifted dramatically in the span of 30 minutes. The human legends were not propaganda designed to frighten enemies. They were warnings disguised as stories, passed down by species who had learned the hard way that humans were unlike any other creatures in the galaxy. Ben reached the viewing section and stood at attention, waiting politely for diplomatic discussions to begin. His torn and bloody uniform told the story of intense combat, but his expression showed only professional courtesy and mild interest in the proceedings. Lieutenant Torres Zara began. "I believe we have much to discuss regarding relations between our civilizations." "Yes, Your Majesty." though I should point out that I am not authorized to negotiate formal agreements. You will need to contact our diplomatic corps for anything beyond basic information exchange." Ambassador Vex leaned forward. "What would your government's response be to territorial expansion by other species near human borders?" Ben considered the question carefully. "Our policy is generally defensive. We prefer to avoid conflicts when possible. However, human space is clearly marked on our navigation charts, and our patrol forces maintain regular monitoring of border regions." The implications were clear. Any species attempting to expand into human territory would face the same type of opposition that Crone had encountered in the arena. Individual human defenders who would continue fighting regardless of odds, wounds, or tactical disadvantages. "I think," Zara said slowly, "that the Velcan Empire would be very interested in establishing formal diplomatic relations with your government. We believe in maintaining peaceful relationships with our neighbors." Ben smiled, the same confident expression he had shown throughout the entire encounter. "I am certain my superiors would welcome diplomatic contact. Humans prefer cooperation to conflict whenever possible." As the delegates began discussing the practical details of interspecies diplomacy, Zara reflected on how completely her worldview had changed in less than 24 hours. The human stories had been true after all. The legends walked among the stars. And now, everyone would need to account for their presence in galactic affairs. Ben Torres, bleeding and battered but entirely unbowed, represented a civilization that would reshape everything. The age of human contact had officially begun.